We are now halfway through the year, and it's time for part 2 of the best indie games released this year. We will take a look at April, May, and June, as that is the second quarter of the year. If you first want to look at part 1, where I go through January, February, March, I will have that link below the like button if you haven't seen that already. The games in this video are the best indie games that have come out the second quarter, in my opinion. And the games in this list are in no particular order. Let's get to it. First up, we have Hades 2. Not a sequel I necessarily thought we would get, but one I definitely wanted. And oh boy, does it deliver or what. Like Hades 1, Supergiant Games dropped Hades 2 into early access, but man, does the game have a lot of content already in it, and well worth playing. I would say that Hades 2 is better in almost every way compared to the first one. The combat was so good in the first game, and you still have that core gameplay, but evolved. It's so good. They've also changed a lot of systems for the better, which is refreshing, especially how you gain power and stats. The weapons are cool as well, demanding a high level of understanding in order to make the most of them, and knowing what boons you want to combine the weapons with while playing. But yet very approachable if you're not the best at these type of games. It's a superb game with a lot more content than you might first assume. A lot of games dropping into early access are kind of bare bones and do evolve with the community, but Hades 2 have already dropped with like 10 to 20 hours worth of content in it. A lot of previous gods are back, with of course a few new ones to mix it up. They have also done a great job with the story and the bosses. It's a must-play game in my opinion. Next up we have V Rising. This one spent about 2 years in early access and finally got its 1.0 release in May. I'm personally not the biggest fan of survival crafting games, but this one I really liked. I think it's mostly because of the bosses and the world. Two of my friends mostly focused on the farming and building part of the game, while I went out exploring and killing. At its core, it's a fairly standard survival crafting game, but with a vampire twist. The world is big with a shit ton of bosses to fight. There is an impressive amount of building potential for your castle. You can easily create your own Dracula castle that looks amazing. The game has a day and night cycle, and as you are a vampire, you will have to stay in the shadows during the day. And that adds kind of an interesting layer to combat during the day. If you're not the biggest fan of harvesting and crafting, there are also settings in game in order to make that part of the game go faster. Really like that. The combat is easily the best part of the game. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to gear and abilities in order to take down the game's hardest bosses and encounters. Next up we have No Rest for the Wicked. My god, just like Supergiant Games, Moon Studio does not seem to miss. The two Ori games were amazing, and No Rest for the Wicked is something special as well. The art style is probably the best so far this year and helps create a truly immersive world that is full of darkness and despair. This one dropped into early access in April, and I've had some issues with performance, but it's gotten a lot better and they have made a lot of improvements to the game in such a short time. The game's structure follows a Souls-like with intense and precise combat. You also have RPG elements, there is a bit of crafting and housing as well. The game is jam-packed with stuff, and yet it doesn't overwhelm you. The combat gets introduced first in the game and is of course the most important part, and you will spend about an hour to 5 hours before you even get introduced to the other systems. The world and story they have built up in the game is amazing as well. It's a really cool game, can't wait for the full release for this one. Next up we have Rabbit and Steel. It might not be the most appealing game to everyone. The art style is very cute and anime-esque, but the gameplay goes hard. I mean really hard. I strongly recommend giving this game a chance and play it with a few friends, because you will find a challenging game that plays much like an MMO boss raid, but it's also a roguelike. The game is all business and no bullshit. You fight bosses with MMO style mechanics. You will have to dodge and coordinate on the fly, and usually very quickly, and then in between fights you will get better gear. You will have a shop as well before it's back into a new insane fight. There are of course a lot of different classes, much like an MMO, all with their own set of skills. There are also a few more to unlock. It's an hectic experience, but a great game. I do recommend you play with friends. I can't really recommend the game if you play it alone. And then the art style might not be for everyone, but if you can look past it, it's an amazing game hidden beneath, and a game well worth trying. Then we have Animal Well. I have a hard time finding words for this game. It's so interesting and mysterious. It has the structure of a Metroidvania, but doesn't really have a story. It's not the hardest platforming game, doesn't really have combat. Instead, it's all about puzzles and secrets. The game lets you explore, fail, and find the solutions all on your own. If you get stuck, there is almost always something else or another path you can try. And with the items you find in the different zones, you will definitely want to come back to already explored zones, as you now have new tools to mess around with. I don't think this game is for everyone. It can be a bit slow and doesn't really follow the standard Metroidvania formula, but that's also what makes the game kind of interesting and special. Everything in the game feels handcrafted, like everything in every area was planned out in immaculate detail, and that only gets more emphasized as you find new stuff in areas you thought you already had explored. Then we have Another Crab's Treasure. There are a lot of games every year trying to replicate or make their own twist on the Souls-like formula. Another Crab's Treasure isn't trying to redefine anything, and instead plays to the Souls-like formula's strength. Good boss encounters, good controls, awesome environments, and flexibility in how you want to play. It might not be the hardest game, and the combat leans towards the easier side, but I think that's a good thing, as the game kind of is a good entry point if you think Elden Ring or Dark Souls seems daunting. You still have hard-hitting bosses, but they don't have that many moves, and they are well telegraphed. You level up in standard formula and get skills along the way. There is a bit more platforming in the game than in usual Souls-likes, and it kind of fits well as you're a crab on the water. The story is funny throughout, with some great characters and a crazy story, and much more approachable than, say, Elden Ring or Dark Souls. Next up we have Minishot Adventures. This is a really fun one, basically a combination between Legend of Zelda and a bullet hell game. An ancient evil has returned, threatening the world and kidnapping your friends. You set out on an adventure to save the world and your friends. And it's quite a large world you get to explore, filled with secrets, resources and enemies. There are a lot of dungeons as well, where everything gets a bit more hectic in the cramped spaces, but they are a good challenge and a lot of fun. On your journey you will level up, which lets you upgrade your skills. There are also shops that sell items, and the abilities you gain in dungeons also change up the gameplay a bit. You're always getting stronger on your journey, and you kind of feel every upgrade, and they are significant, which is nice, because as you progress through the game, you're going up against harder and harder enemies and bosses. It's a very nice and colorful twin-stick shooter with some really good controls. It's a blast to dodge and weave as the screen gets jam-packed with bullets from enemies. Then we have Sulaco. Shooter games are my bread and butter. I have grown up playing shooter games, primarily the Halo series. Sulaco do remind me a bit of the early Halo games, but more so Doom 3 and Fear. If you have played these games and others like them, odds are you will find a reference or two in this game. This is a fantastic FPS game that is actually quite hard, or at least make you play and adapt a bit differently if you're used to the modern shooters we have. The AI in the game is pretty smart and will definitely take you down with ease if you let them overwhelm you. They will try their best to flank you and outmaneuver you at all times. The story is the biggest downside in the game, as you will have to read a lot in order to understand what is happening. It would be nice with a few more in-game characters, maybe a cutscene or two to flesh out the world and story a bit more. Not that the world building is bad or anything, I just want more. The combat is however excellent and the star of the show. There is a level of destruction in the game, making every encounter messy and chaotic in the best way possible. As you get better at the game and progress, enemies will get new tools, the encounters will get harder. To combat them, you of course have a lot of guns at your disposal. They can be upgraded as well. You have a slide and a punch, and using the environment as cover is necessary in order to survive. It's a really cool game with some amazing sound design as well. This one dropped into early access in May and will stay in early access for about 2 years, quite a long time. But you still have a lot of content in the game already. The maps are huge. There is a lot I want to say about this game, but I'm gonna stop myself and save that for another video. But the game is well worth checking out. these are the games I found deserving of a spot on this list of games I have played during these 3 months. If you think I've missed any great games, please leave a comment below so I can check them out. Otherwise, have a great day and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.